You're listening to Things You Should Ngo, and I'm your host, Andy Ngo. Last November, a 22-year-old Canadian graduate student was thrust into a national scandal over free speech when she exposed how overzealous political correctness had stifled viewpoint diversity at her university. Lindsay Shepherd, a communications major at Wilfrid Laurier University in Waterloo, Ontario, secretly recorded a meeting where she was interrogated by two professors and an administrator. Her crime? As a teaching assistant, she screened 5 minutes of a public television debate on gender pronouns during class featuring psychologist Jordan Peterson. The literal crime they accused her of? They said she violated Canadian human rights law and created an unsafe environment for trans students. Lindsay leaked her recording to the media, and a public outcry quickly ensued. Following an independent investigation by the university, she was cleared of wrongdoing and exonerated. Now, over half a year later, she recently announced a multi-million-dollar lawsuit against her university for harassment and other damages.
Yeah, so people have been urging me to sue since November. Like, a lot of people really wanted me to do it. A lot of people offered help. A lot of lawyers offered help. And I didn't want to. And that was because I didn't think it was necessary. I thought the media and public pressure was enough. Like, I just felt like it would be too much if I launched a lawsuit. Like, that would just be kind of too much. But, so the official narrative from, the news was that there was a meeting, which I secretly recorded, released to the media. Then there was an investigation, which showed that I did nothing wrong. And then there was an apology and an exoneration. But the thing is that all ended in December, but it keeps going after. It keeps going. So, for example, my supervising professor from the January to April semester, she tried to report me to the deans twice for complete non-issues. But really, the final straw was when a harassment and discrimination complaint was filed against me. Something that I view, and it's a 4-page complaint, and that person writes why they think I'm a harasser and discriminator.
Can you disclose what was said?
I can't, no.
Okay.
No. It's in the court file, and so journalists can access it and read it if they want. But I can't talk about it. I'm still under investigation, technically.
I found and read the deposition. According to the file prepared by her lawyer, one of Lindsay's peers, who is a trans activist, accused her of discrimination and harassment. As a result, the university has allegedly subjected Lindsay to an ongoing, frivolous investigation. The suit says they threaten her with repercussions if she spoke about the complaint. Lindsay's accuser did not respond to my repeated inquiries for comment.
But I see it as just very clearly wanting to censor me through that complaint. The goal was to censor. And that person knew that they would never see me again because coursework ended in April, so I don't have to be on campus anymore. And so they knew they would not see me anymore. And they also chose to skip mediation and go straight to investigation, which shows that, okay, you had no interest in solving any kind of problem, resolving an issue. You just wanted to go straight to getting me in trouble. For something that I view as illegitimate.
While she has come under criticism for her $3.6 million lawsuit, Lindsay has found unsurprising support from the man whose views got her in trouble in the first place, Jordan Peterson. He announced a $1.5 million Canadian defamation lawsuit against Laurier in June. In Lizzie's recording, her professors compared him to Hitler. I asked Dr. Peterson if it was baseless for him to sue based on what was said about him in a private meeting. He disagreed with the premise of my question.
It wasn't private? How was it private? It was a disciplinary meeting at a university. That's not private. Those people were operating under what should have been appropriate administrative guidelines, dozens of which they violated simultaneously. It wasn't a dinner party between friends. It was an appalling inquisition conducted upon a student who was acting entirely within the purview of her role as admitted by the president of the university. It was not a private conversation by any stretch of the imagination.
How do you respond to your detractors who say that you're a free speech hypocrite for launching a lawsuit?
They have no concept. They have no concept of what constitutes free speech. Free. That's such a preposterous claim that it doesn't even justify a response. You can't. Free speech doesn't mean people can lie about everything with impunity. That's not free speech. That's the sort of caricature of free speech that someone who hated free speech would generate to interfere with the integrity of the idea. So it's inexcusable. So look, I didn't go after Wilfrid Laurier despite the fact that I had every reason to and every legal right to. I didn't go after them for 8 months until it was absolutely crystal clear that they'd learned nothing whatsoever as a consequence of the international outrage over their treatment of Lindsay Shepherd. So then she revealed what had gone on after they apologized to her continued mistreatment at the hands of the same miscreants, and so I thought, well, obviously they didn't learn anything. So maybe 2 lawsuits was a better lesson than 1. So I was very measured in my response, and it took me months to decide whether or not I was going to move forward with it. And had they showed even the least sign of having learned something productive, then I wouldn't have done it at all.
Lindsay Shepherd and Jordan Peterson are connected in more ways than one. In August 2017, Peterson was scheduled to speak on a panel at Ryerson University in Toronto that included controversial Canadian news commentator Faith Goldy. The event was cancelled by Ryerson following the violent white nationalist rally in Charlottesville, Virginia. Goldy sympathetically covered the event for Rebel Media, a Canadian right-wing news site, but was fired after appearing as a guest on a podcast produced by neo-Nazi site The Daily Stormer. The panel was rescheduled for November, but Goldy was not re-invited. Since then, Goldy has become more vocal about her white nationalist views, appearing frequently as a guest on alt-right YouTube channels. In March, Lindsay invited her to speak on campus as a guest for a free speech student group she started. That association continues to dog her to this day.
Did we want someone who would be controversial? Yes. That was part of it, because it is about testing the waters. It's about, can we bring in someone and handle this maturely? And when she presents, can we just go up with our questions after and challenge her views in a civil manner and deconstruct what she's saying? And ultimately the answer was no, because it was shut down by fire alarm the first time and then exorbitant security fees the second time. And I think that proves that the free speech crisis is not manufactured. These people are being shut down. And if you have a problem with what they're saying, then I think the best way, and tons of people are saying this, the best way is to familiarize yourself with the argument that will take down their argument.
What happened when she came to your campus and the event was shut down? Can you...
Yeah, so there was this, they called it a counter-protest. It was kind of like a rally, and it was called No Nazis at Laurier. And they had like music and stuff, which is kind of nice, I guess. But again, even just calling her a Nazi, it's a rhetorical tactic that I don't know is very helpful to anybody when you start to call everybody a Nazi. Do you know what I mean?
I spoke with Miss Faith Goldy to ask her about her political beliefs. Well, I'll just be very direct. Are you a white nationalist?
No.
You're not?
No.
Are you alt-right?
No.
Are you a fascist?
No.
But you do talk a lot about ethnocide in preserving Canada's European identity. So that was kind of the motivation for me to ask if you were a white nationalist.
I would like to see Canada remain a European Canadian majority, as we had been and have been and remain for all of our history up until 1971, when multiculturalism became a federal state-enforced policy, all of it without a democratic consensus or even a national conversation. And at the time that multiculturalism was inflicted upon our country, Canada was over 90% European Canadian. It was always understood that this was our history. This is how our immigration recruitment worked, essentially. And what we saw was a lot less of the sort of debate and conversation that is fueled by identity politics that we see now. So would I like to see our immigration rerouted? Last year, 2017, being the very first time that Canada ever saw more immigrants brought in from Africa than we did from Europe, then yes, absolutely. But that isn't to say that I don't want a happy nation for every type of people. I believe in self-determination, and I certainly do not want to become a minority in my own country, because goodness knows, at my age, I spent the better part of my adult life hearing from minority groups that it sucks to be a minority, so I don't wish to inflict that status upon myself.
I'll let that speak for itself. I asked Lindsay if slurs against faith like Nazi have some legitimacy given the media she's engaged with.
I still think, like, a word like Nazi, isn't it almost more respectful, though, to keep it to World War II and the Holocaust? Like, I don't know if it kind of does a disservice. And what's interesting is a professor told me that he actually thinks neo-Nazis are more evil than Nazis, because Nazis were kind of like socially conditioned into taking those roles, whereas neo-Nazis today are like actively choosing to do it, even though society is very clear that this is a very vile view that you have. And I don't think, I'm not totally clear on her views still, but we're not going to invite her again, right? Inviting someone 3 times to speak would be, just gets to the point of ridiculousness, I think.
Do you think that means that the protesters have won?
I suppose so, yeah. Mm-hmm.
What does that tell you about your university then?
I don't know if it says anything about the university, because Wilfrid Laurier did host it the first time. It was someone who pulled the fire alarm, and the university apparently investigated it, but never released any information about who it was. That's still a mystery. But the second time we tried to host her, it was at the University of Waterloo, so 10 minutes down the road from Wilfrid Laurier. And they gave us a security quote of $28,500, which is, of course, something we cannot afford. So that's maybe more on the university level, possibly. I mean, if you don't like something, I would say either don't show up, don't give it legitimacy. Because when you protest it, don't you know that you're giving momentum to that person? Because now that person can say, like, I've been shut down. That makes them more interesting.
Faith thinks she could have convinced many in the audience of her worldview if she was given the opportunity to speak.
I know that the reason why they had to shut me down, and by they I mean even parts of their administration, is because they were afraid of my arguments, which is go to a classroom full of hundreds of young students and share with them just the facts of our history in this country, the facts of our immigration policies, the facts that not a single Canadian in this entire country was ever asked if we were interested in performing a demographic headstand.
Faith tells me Lindsay never showed signs of sympathizing with her views.
We have had very, very limited communications personally, but she's never expressed to me anything that would make me believe that she was of a similar worldview to myself. That's for certain. But look, it's not to be unexpected. She should not be wholly surprised by the fact that, frankly, we live in such a cartoonish political time that it's become about guilt by association as opposed to what you actually articulate, right? And I will remind folks that only about a week or two after I was scheduled to speak, I believe the first time, she hosted under the same quote unpopular opinion series another bloke who was, I think, a self-professed libertarian who was pro-immigration and multiculturalism. So my heart goes out to her because she showed a tremendous amount of bravery in asking me to speak. And I will say that I told her, Lindsay, are you sure you want to do this? And she said, yes, because I believe in free speech.
How would you have engaged with Miss Goldy's ideas if the event was not shut down?
I would ask, like, what is, for her, how did she come to this idea that a white ethno-state, which I think is what she's advocating for, how did she come to the conclusion that that is desirable? Like, why? And what historically motivates her to want that? You know, these are the things I'm interested in. Fundamentally, I'm interested in why people hold the positions that they do, especially when it's something that I don't hold. But you know what's interesting is, like, when you host someone like this, I mean, it's 3 months later from March, and it's like people are still asking me about her, you know, and it really does become about the speaker, and you know, your name becomes attached to someone.
Do you regret the invitation then?
I don't regret the invitation, no. I suppose I get kind of annoyed that it comes up all the time and I have to address it all the time, especially when, you know, I don't agree with that person's views, but people assume that I do because I wanted her to speak. Is it annoying that I have to? I mean, look, I don't necessarily want to have to talk about white ethno-states, and like I don't want to have to talk about that, to be honest. But, you know, I take responsibility. I took it on, so I'll deal with it.
Lindsay disavowed the political left in a video in March that's been viewed over 800,000 times. I asked her if that should be interpreted as her coming out as someone on the right. She's been accused of being a right-wing provocateur.
So with that video, I just wanted to point out the problems I see with the left and what it has become. Ultimately, I think the divide between left and right is often quite unhelpful, because I think we can say for ourselves a lot of the time that some of our views might be more right and some might be more left. So did I, like, some people took that video as like, oh, I've completely abandoned who I was before. And it's not true. Like, I'm still pro-choice. I like Canada's healthcare system, which is socialized medicine. You know, those are things that I did not, like, give up suddenly, right?
Is it fair to interpret that video's message as goodbye to the left, hello to the right?
Oh, absolutely not. No.
Okay.
It was... And at the end of the video, I even say, like, you can interpret this however you want. I'm just trying to point out some of the tactics that are used by, you know, you can say the political left, but ultimately that still is a simplification. Like, it is just the politically correct totalitarians, if you want to go that far. And I don't like the way that they call people names and don't want to engage and try to instill this tactic of guilt by association. So, like, if you talk to someone, that must mean that you hold their view and stuff like that. That's a tactic. Those are tactics that seem pretty much used by the politically correct totalitarians.
For the rest of my interview with Lindsay, I asked her questions about the interrogation incident last November at Laurier. What do you see are the biggest misconceptions that are still either being reported or mentioned either on social media about what happened, if any?
I think most people get it, to be honest. Some people call me a professional victim, which I don't like, or a free speech grifter. For example, the Wilfrid Laurier University Faculty Association said that my club, the Laurier Society for Open Inquiry, is manufacturing a free speech crisis at Laurier where none exists. But that's kind of preposterous and kind of insulting, because the audio recording that I released to the media shows that there is a crisis. Not only free speech, but what is the university about? You know, free speech is always connected to these bigger issues.
How did you have the foresight to record that day?
So I received the email summoning me to that meeting less than 24 hours before I was supposed to be there. And it said that a diversity equity official will be there at the meeting. And I thought to myself, I'm not the kind of person who needs to meet with a diversity equity official. I'm really not. I'm not the kind of person who needs sensitivity training. And so kind of like a red flag was raised for me. And then so I called my mom and we talked about it, and we came to the conclusion that to protect myself, the best idea is if I go in recording it.
That's one of the best decisions you made?
Oh, it would have turned out completely differently, because the thing is, like, when I contacted the first reporter who broke the story, Christy Blatchford from the National Post, at that point I still wasn't sure if it was legal for me to have recorded. And it turns out it was, because only one person in the room needs to know that something is being recorded. And of course, that person was me in that situation. So you can't just leave a recorder in a room, record someone else's conversation, and then retrieve the recorder, right? So I found out it was legal. And then, so the first story where it wasn't clear that I had recorded it, I just told the reporter, don't say that I did that. Okay. And then, so she didn't. And then a lot of the comments were, oh, this is just like her side of the story. This is just the TA's side. We need to know the other side. So it would have just been that, like, perpetually. It would have just been my perception of the events. But when people can hear it for themselves, it's so much more visceral, right? People have come up to me and told me that the recording made them cry.
You sounded so vulnerable in that recording when I listened, but the person that I see today appears very strong and confident. Has your personality changed? I
think so, yes. Not in a huge way, but I've grown more resilient, I would say. Like, I can stand up to people better now because I guess I can make more sense of their position or their political position or whatever, and why they might be attacking me. I think the reason why I'm so stressed out and like crying in that meeting is because I was so genuinely confused. And like, when you think that a university is about showing different sides of an issue and about open inquiry and stuff like that, but then you're being told that no, it's not, and you're in trouble, I think you just get really genuinely confused.
Why did you decide to seek out the media when it happened? I mean, you could have made the choice at that time of, this happened, I want to continue with my education, don't want to make a fuss, I'll just quietly submit. But you chose a different path, and has altered the course of your life.
So I see the role of the media, right? Like, the media is really important, and so I knew that it was quite necessary that people know what is happening in our universities, that this kind of stuff is happening to people who, and I, of course, I still think that I didn't do anything wrong. All I did was show a clip from public television of an argument that many people in society hold. And it is important for us to be able to understand other people's arguments and to have conversations with them. And to say that that is wrong is still crazy to me. And so when it gets to the point where a university is not teaching those skills anymore, well, people should know, because people pay thousands of dollars to go to university. Or, at least it raises some alarms about the different kind of courses or programs that are out there, or different kind of professors.
So the president at Wilfrid Laurier admitted that there was not a formal complaint filed against you. So who ultimately made that meeting happen where you were interrogated?
It's still unknown. It's still mystery.
You don't know to this day?
No. It was no formal complaint and no informal complaint relevant to a Laurier policy. So it's still a mystery. I don't know if I'll ever know.
When you watch that 5-minute clip that you played in class, the one that got you in trouble, do you now view it in a different way than how you did before? Like, do you feel that Jordan B. Peterson's protestations was warranted?
Yeah, well, the thing is, like, my view towards him actually really, really changed. Like, at first, back in November, yeah, I thought he was, like, so, like, controversial, and his views were quite distasteful, which is, like, part of the reason why I showed it to my class, right? Was, like, here's someone with a kind of distasteful view that we need to debunk. But now I listen to him and I find him completely non-controversial. If I wasn't getting the influx of Twitter messages and emails and just people coming up to me like I did, I would have felt really unsure that what I'm doing is the right thing to do. And I probably would have just like closed down my Twitter account and stopped talking and tried to fade away, right? Like, it really matters that people actually reach out and say, like, I support you 100%. Like, what you're doing is great. Like, go get them. Stuff like that.
If you're awarded Salmoral the money, what do you want to do with it?
I want to donate some to Heterodox Academy and other organizations like it. I think that's just the most just way for the money to be spent. Like, and, you know, at the end of the day, I don't know if I'll win. I don't know if I necessarily care if I win. It's just about seeing the direction that it's going to go.
Why do you find the work of Heterodox Academy important?
Honestly, so one of the criticisms of free speech is that it's a cover-up for, like, extreme right-wing views. And to a degree, I kind of get that, and I think that's valid. But the thing with Heterodox Academy is they're just so not that, and they don't have any ulterior motive, and they don't have any agenda. They're genuinely about bridging. And they think that'll, you know, result in the betterment of the academy and mutual understanding between people, which will result in better social connection. Like, I just see them as really authentic. And I think that's really great to have an organization like that. And, you know, I'd probably donate to similar organizations. Like in Canada, we have the Society for Academic Freedom and Scholarship, which, again, people say is, you know, an extreme right-wing group or whatever. But really, they're just trying to protect academia.
You are on track to complete your degree in a matter of months. What is next for Lindsay?
I don't know yet. And I'm open. I'm open to anything.
If you could go back in time to before November and tell yourself a single piece of advice, what would it be?
I'm not sure. At the end of the day, like, I would probably do all this again because, like, how can you ever regret something that made you into the person that you are, right? And I've learned a lot, and I've done a lot of research into things that matter. I'm engaged with a lot of really profound issues right now, and that's all really important to me, and I'm glad that I'm being intellectually challenged in that way, because I didn't really feel intellectually challenged in my master's program. So this is kind of providing that for me.
Well, thank you for this interview.
Thank you.
And that was Lindsay Shepherd, communications graduate student at Wilfrid Laurier University. Earlier, you heard from Professor Jordan Peterson and Faith Goldy. If you enjoyed this interview, please consider becoming my supporter through Patreon or by giving a one-time gift on PayPal. As you can imagine, it takes a lot of time and resources to produce these episodes on my own. Your support will really help me. You can find the links in the description.